with Kolos, who goes by some unpronounceable in-game name.
Shiochan Tsugu.
Right, right. And he just got second place in the Invitational. I was going to go through his four decks real quick. So, like almost everyone except No Way It's Jay, you brought Kessiva.
Right.
And you had a couple interesting cards. But why do you think Kessiva is so popular, and what kind of twist did you take on this deck?
This is the exact same deck I've been playing since April. So there's a slight alteration. I've been playing this deck for just like 7, 8 months now. It's the same as it's always been. You just want to play on curve stuff until you get to the 7 mana turn where you play your 7 mana instant win card Revenant. And if you can just play three Revenants in a row, you beat any other deck.
Right, yeah.
So
The
that, that
inevitability is very good.
that's why Kasiva is so good. Kasiva just relies completely on Revenant, and she's best faction to play against fast decks because Kaleno is hard to remove and heals.
Right, yeah. Kaleno's been very effective at countering the aggro decks. Now, your version includes Nether Summoning and Reaper of the Nine Moons, which some cards that are occasionally seen, but Reaper is cycled out of the meta and come back in from time to time. So why did you include those cards over some of the more typical options?
This deck is. I actually anticipated Kasiva being very popular, so on the ladder and in tournament, it's probably the best deck in the game at the moment. So the Reaper, the Nether Summoning Reaper, and the Lightbender is to beat that matchup. Yeah, Nether Summoning is pretty good. It skills itself with itself. With Revenant and makes Reaper very hard to deal with. Even if it gets dispelled, you can just Nether Summoning it back, and then you know.
Right, it's kind of like a double consuming rebirth type of effect. So you've teched pretty heavily for the mirror, is what you're aiming for with this deck.
Right. I don't think it sacrifices anything too much in other regards. The cards I cut that most people have, it's Void Pulse, right? The one that deals damage and then heals you for a little bit.
Right.
Right. So I cut Void. I cut a little bit of healing to for a stronger mid range matchup in the mirror. So I don't think this is too crazy, but I think if this turned out to be one of the slowest decks in the tournament based on the games that I've watched. So I guess this is a greedy deck after all.
Well, yeah, I mean you do run the double rights obliterate, so you do have a pretty high top end, or at least high for duelist standards.
Yeah,
And then you also ran the cryptographer, which
right.
isn't I don't think is seen that often in Cassiva from what I've seen. What kind of pointed you towards that as opposed to some other two drops?
Because Cryptographer is my substitute for Bloodshot Alchemist. That's what everyone else runs in that slot instead. And every deck needs at minimum over 9 turn 1 plays. Um, so I need more. Abyssal Crawler is a must-have. Loots is also a must-have for the creep synergy. Mystic Healer is there's a debate between that and Azurite Herald, but I prefer Healing Mystic because I think it's a little bit more versatile. So I just need any. Just need any card for the two for turn 1 plays. That's not those three, and I ended up choosing Cryptographer because it helps Juggernaut get more consistency. It curves out a little bit better. The thing with Bloodtier Alchemist is that if you're player one and you play your two Bloodtier Alchemists and the other player plays their two Bloodtier Alchemists, you instantly lose. So Cryptographer is a little bit more, a little bit stronger against. It doesn't answer itself like Bloodtier Alchemist. So
Right.
yeah,
And since you don't have any three drops at all, actually, getting if you're on player one, maybe getting to that mana tile and having something alive to get to that mana tile allows you to accelerate into the four drops that you do have. So that's kind of an interesting choice there. But yeah, I think Cassiva, I think a lot of players kind of keyed on it being the most powerful or one of the most powerful strategies. So next up, you have Zaran. I think you're the only player who bought Zaran, so this is a pretty
Yep.
interesting thing to see.
This is the dankest deck that I've brought in my lineup,
Right, right.
and I call this the Paladin Lionar, and all my deck has over 9 turn 1 play, so that's why I have the 2 of Wisp. This deck is actually like Lionar does not have a lot of open slots that you can play around with. Like the biggest thing to notice on this deck, if you play a lot of Lionar, is that I cut Silverguard Knight, and that's because there's too many 3 drops. You don't want 9 3 drops. This deck focuses on proccing Sunforged Lancer and to get your general really big. And since every single card is below 4 mana, um, it doesn't give removals a lot of value, and it just give your general a lot of power. Um, I think this deck, I brought this deck, I chose this deck because I feel like this deck is very hard to deal with. There's very um yeah there's very few decks that'll have a positive that will easily deal with a buff general. Like Lightbender is one. Like people run a lot of silences, but with like a Sunforged Lancer or Scintilla on the back, they have to pick and choose if they want to silence your infinite generation minion or if they want to silence your general.
Right. Yeah,
But
and you run a huge, I think it looks like 17 different healing effects, so you'll definitely be able to proc that. Um, the Sunford Lance in addition to the Bloodborne spell. Um, so you removed Silver God Knight, which is often seen as just kind of an auto include. So
right,
that's interesting. And then you're utilizing the Trinity Oath, which I think has been, very high impact from the new set. One of the higher impact cards, just overall. Um, and so your top end just looks like you do have the meltdown. How has that been performing, and what do you?
um, yeah, just need some. I need some late game threats to just help me curve out. So that's what the meltdown is for. It was a 3 of, but um, I think 2 is enough with enough cycling. I think the meltdown is pretty good. There's no other late game option really that gives an instant effect. So
Right, yeah, it's very easy to get value off it because you can immediately proc the what's the thing called? Blood Surge. Blood Surge.
right.
And Decimate. What's Decimate targeting? Because that's something a couple people have run in Lion lately. Usually as a one of.
It's targeting Jax and well, uh, like Scorn also beat Jax, but there's a lot of scenarios where your opponent has like random minions all over the map, and you can't waste time chasing down the random minions with your general, or else they just play more infinite generation minions, and Decimate really keeps a check on that. Like the specific example would be like Reva. You know, I have a lot of experience in the past where Songhai would just spread out everything to play around Lightbender, um, and they're all high priority things to clear. So yeah, this also beats mech if there's a mech drop in the corner.
Right, and yeah, there have been a fair amount of mechs in this tournament, so that was kind of a good metagame call. Yeah, I mean, everyone else brought, I think, maybe 6 or 7 other players brought the Agion. So, what do you think this offers that Agion doesn't? I mean, to go away from a very powerful strategy like Agion in favor of this, you must have had a strong draw to it.
I
Um,
think this beats Argion because I didn't expect anyone else to bring Circle of Life. I expected them to bring like a tempo list without even um, Ironclip Guardian. I don't think Ironclip Guardian is playable now that Kasiva and removal are so prevalent. So I feel like this deck can outlast Temple Archeon and is favored.
Right. Yeah, I think in the 6 or 7 or 8 or however many Lion Owl lists we saw, there was 0 Ironcliff Guardians. So that was definitely a good read. So yeah, I think this is a pretty interesting deck. It was cool to see someone break out something that wasn't Tempo Archeon. And next we have a mech deck. So this is definitely something that we did see from a lot of other people, and you kind of mixed in the Decimus package with the Entropic Gaze and the spikes. So what's the and you're only running 12 mechs, so you're not kind of all in on that. So what's kind of the theory behind this deck, and why did you use the mech package as your kind of minion package in this deck?
Starhorn. Okay, so this deck and my last deck are both mechs. I admit when I was preparing deck list for this tournament, I, I realized that most okay, like last patch, this metagame compared to previous metagame, this metagame has a lot more good cards. There was a lot of cards in expansion that that are very good. No, I don't know. This isn't okay. The point is, before your deck played a lot of average cards, so people you can sacrifice, you can replace some of the average cards with tech cards to deal with your opponent. But now that the decks are more focused, have a more um, coherent strategy, the amount of tech cards are lower. I don't know if that makes sense. Like okay, let's say before the expansion, you make a deck, and you make your you go make do the first run through. You just throw in the cards that you want in your deck, and you find out you have 6 cards left, 6 slots left. So you're like, okay, well maybe for this 6 slot, let me just add 3 more silence. Um, but now you might only have 2 slot left because there's more strategy. Yeah, the deck power is increased and there's more staples to put in. So now you don't add the 2 silences anymore. You just focus on wherever your strategy is. So I think mechs are actually harder to deal with now than before, and that's why I threw the Starhorn mech out. The old Star I played the Decimus Burn Starhorn on the ladder, but I realized that this deck doesn't sacrifice much. It's still Burn Starhorn, and the mech package just makes it even better.
Yeah, I think a couple people kind of keyed on the fact that the of the Decimus aggro deck, the Decimus Tech Spikes and Tropic Gaze package was really the strength of that deck, and
Right.
everything else was just kind of going along with that strategy. So you kind of were able to slot that into a different package of the mechs to give you kind of a different win condition. I no, I think you're definitely right that the decks have gotten tighter. There's not as many spots, even in this deck. If you were to try to remove cards that aren't core to the strategy, you'd be looking at maybe trying to remove the 2 elucidators to fit in whatever kind of tech cards you wanted, and it's not where you have the 6 slots for dispel or grove keepers or Zenruis or whatever you were playing in there before. So I think yeah, it definitely taxes people's ability to answer mech strategies because they don't have the space for kind of low power level cards that are very situational. So that definitely makes sense. And yeah, we see on the Tuesday melee they started using sideboards, so that might be an interesting way to see what people come up with in that type of situation. And then your last deck is also a mech deck, right?
Right.
It's a Fey deck, and I think the notable includes really for me Meltdown, Fostiva, and you're even running Enfeeble without blistering scorn. So what kind of sets you on this deck, and how did you arrive at this exact list?
No, I don't think Faye really needs blistering needs Scorn because Frostborn is already an AOE, and it covers that weakness very well. The biggest, the dankest card in this deck will have to be Frostiva, and this is a scenario where I have two slots left, and I don't know what to put. So I want a 5 card, 5 mana card, any 5 mana card, for that slot to help me curve out in case I don't draw an Elkion, and I settled on Frostiva. Um, I think there's no other option. What else can I put in this slot? Dancing Blade? That's an option, but Dancing Blade is too fair. Um, the reason I chose um, Frostiva was the mech decks are typically very defensive. Um, if you don't get the crazy Wings of Mechazor start, um, because mech minions by themselves aren't very powerful, or most people just run them naturally. You tend to lose the board very quickly and get cornered. But when you like minions with divine shield,
Force field.
force field, there it is, force field. Minions with force field tend to be better when you place them away from the enemy general, because it'll get the first trade in and then it'll refresh the shield. So you're guaranteed to, no, it'll guaranteed to go 2 for 1. So I feel like Frostiva, if you really helps cover some of the weaknesses. I feel like I can make a defensive play with Frostiva, and that would convince my opponent to place minions out of range of Frostiva. And that would buy me an extra turn. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so then you mentioned the Elkion, which is a card that I've kind of wondered about in mech decks because, the idea being that you want to draw a critical mass of mechs, so you would kind of think that your draw would want to be from your deck. So what makes Elkion good in these strategies, even though it doesn't really allow you to get, the critical mass of 5 mechs as quickly as possible?
I feel like Elkion is only good in Fey because Fey doesn't have card draw. So, um, Fey, a faction with no card draw playing mechs, because mechs run out your hand very quickly. Um, so I just need card draw, any form of card draw, and Elkion is the only viable option. This doesn't also give my opponents a card.
Okay.
So it is pretty bad, but there's no choice.
It's pretty bad, but there's no choice. Yeah, I mean the Corona kind of gives you a little bit of cycling, so to speak, but it doesn't really give you any card advantage. So you also have that as well. So what is this deck beat? Why bring mech decks? We see a lot more mech decks in tournaments than on the ladder. So what are you targeting with this, and why do you think it's better in tournaments than on the ladder for the most part?
Like, I don't think there's a difference between tournament and ladder meta. I I think because we don't have a casual ladder, and our because we don't have a casual ladder, our ranked ladder is not very competitive. People, and since people do dailies with factions where they don't even have cards for, there's a lot of rank inflation. So it the ladder meta isn't close to competitive meta because people just don't try hard on the ladder. Um, so yeah, so I think Max is just as good, if not better, on the ladder. But what this deck targets, I think this deck has a strong matchup because Frost. Um, I, I think the tier list I made with Brian is still very relevant. Where we have Abyssian tier 1, Mag and Lion are tier 2. I think they actually is reflected by this tournament. Whereas Zeron is last, Mag and Lion are second most popular. Kasiva, I think everyone brought some sort of Abyssian, right?
Yeah, I think it was 7 Casivas and 1 Lilith, or 6 Casivas and 1 Lilith, something along those lines.
Yeah, I think our 3 day end prediction is actually extremely accurate. So nothing beats Kasiva, so that's not a matchup I have to worry about. Actually, mechs are actually decent against Kasiva because Kasiva doesn't have ranged dispel.
Right.
But that's not really something to worry about too much. So the second most popular would be Magmar and Lionar. Lionar against this deck is, I'd say, about 50. No, I'm slightly unfavored. I can get out tempoed very easily, and every minion dies to Holy Immolation. But Magmar might be targetable with this deck because Frost Corona is extremely good on Bath. Once your general moves more than one turn away from Bath, he can usually never catch up. So the Bath hero power is completely neutralized. So yeah, if my opponent brought um, a punch based Magmar, I would be able to target it with this deck.
Right. Okay, that's interesting. So yeah, you don't think Cassiva is something you want to target. So you're just gonna bring your own Cassiva and hope to kind of win that role one way or the other. So you're targeting other decks. You're not kind of going at the king of the meta right now.
Right, there's no way to beat Kasiva.
No. Okay. Well, thank you for talking with us. Good. Congratulations in the tournament. Hope you guys all enjoyed yourself.
Yeah, thanks.